The parish of Kingston is the capital of Jamaica, and it is located on the southeastern end of the island. Until 1692, the parish of Kingston, as we know it, did not exist. Kingston came into existence after a massive earthquake destroyed 2/3 of Port Royal and killed almost 3,000 inhabitants. Survivors of the earthquake fled to the Liguanea Plains, only to perish from exposure and diseases. As a result, 2 weeks after Port Royal's destruction, the government purchased 200 acres of land, known as Colonel Barry's Crawle, at a cost of £1,000 sterling. Up until the sale, the land was owned by Sir William Beeston, who was absent from the island at the time. Therefore, his attorney Nicholas Laws conducted the sale on Beeston's behalf. The acquisition of the 200 acres of land was for the sole purpose of the erection of a new town, Kingston. Hence, early maps list Kingston's name as Beeston. This name, of course, is purely due to the land being acquired from Sir William Beeston. In July 1692, a plan for the building of the new town of Kingston was drawn up by John Goff, a surveyor. Also drawn up and issued were the terms by which settlers could acquire land. However, Port Royal was still the choice of residence by many because of its former grandeur. Consequently, the development of Kingston was stalled. It seems that as soon as the horrors of the earthquake were forgotten and a sense of normalcy re-established, many sailed back to Port Royal. However, any memory of Port Royal's grandiose glory soon came to a halt once again. A few years later, a catastrophic fire in 1703 completely destroyed most of what the earthquake had spared, as well as buildings that had been restored after the devastating earthquake. Once again, the now catastrophic weary Port Royal residents migrated to Kingston, most never to return to Port Royal. Please like this video if you love history like I do. Soon after 1703, a law was passed declaring Kingston the chief seat, the port for trade and entry into the island. From this moment on, Kingston's prosperity was assured, and in 1713 it was declared law that Kingston should forever be taken and esteemed as a district and parish with the powers of any other parish. Further, it should have the right to send 3 representatives to the assembly. Supplementary development of Kingston followed in the latter years as the population of the area grew. In 1842, the city of Kingston received its first public water supply from the Hope River. Though unfiltered, it supplied approximately 1,600 homes. Over the next 3 years, following the supply of water, the railway to Spanish Town was opened on November 21st, 1845. In about the middle of the century, a coaling station, which is storage for coal for the steam engines, was established near the foot of East Street. This now meant that steamers can call at Kingston on their way to Central and South America. Passengers and crews could disembark on the shore and spend money that would greatly benefit the city. Kingston, capital of Jamaica. The idea of Kingston becoming the capital of Jamaica was first put forward by the governor of Jamaica, Admiral Charles Knowles. Historians have pointed out that somewhere around the mid-18th century, Admiral Knowles sought to have the capital city moved from Spanish Town to Kingston. The reason for this, as noted by historians, was due to the fact that Kingston had a greater port capacity than the island's other ports combined. Also, Kingston's location benefited from the trade in contraband with Spain's recalcitrant colonies in the Caribbean. Not many shared Knowles' forward-thinking views. After all, they saw Kingston as merely 50 years old, and with many who thought it could never succeed Spanish Town as a suitable capital city, especially as Spanish Town had been the capital for 230 years. Therefore, a vigorous opposition from members of Spanish Town and the western parishes ensued. Nonetheless, Admiral Knowles' proposal met with strong support from members of the Assembly for Kingston and other eastern parishes. Finally, steps were taken to make Kingston the capital of Jamaica. Governor Knowles then sent the paperwork off to the United Kingdom for it to be made into law. Admiral Knowles' successor, Henry Moore, announced in 1758 that the king had declined to pass the bill that would in effect make Kingston the capital city. For decades, the relentless lobbying by merchants putting forth their arguments for Kingston to succeed Spanish Town as capital, extolling Kingston for occupying the ideal position, a position that eclipsed that of Spanish Town. Then there was Kingston's link with the outside world through its shipping connections, not to mention the city in waiting, ever-growing population. The switch was finally signaled, and Kingston became the island's capital in 1872 after over a century. Growth and development. During the post-emancipation period, private and speculative builders added 2 suburban zones to settlement developed during the 18th century. Buildings prior to 1890 were laid out in geometrical designs reminiscent of Gough's original town plans. By 1848, new houses were constructed in the west, north, and east of the city. Settlements were developed at Raytown, Brownstown, Lindustown, Annatown, and Simmet Village, otherwise known as West Kingston today. Between 1848 and 1889, the suburbs of Fletcherstown, Kingston Gardens, Almontown, Franklintown, and Passmoretown were constructed. In 1920, buildings in several of these districts were composed of densely populated tenements. These continuously populated areas soon spread across the parish boundary into St. Andrew, reaching Up Park Camp, Jonestown in the north, west, and east respectively. The second zone of sparsely populated suburbs developed after 1890 and expanded rapidly between the First and Second World Wars, when the population of the capital doubled as inhabitants moved from other parts of Kingston into St. Andrew. By the 1940s, the population extended eastward to Long Mountain, northwest to Matilda's Corner, north to Crossroads, Halfway Tree, and the Sandy Gully area. From the late 18th century until around the 1890s, the Liguanea Plains existed as a quasi-suburb of Kingston. Its agricultural character had declined with introduction of the sugar industry. Over time, cattle pens and farmer estates were turned into residences for businessmen. Then a few years into the 20th century, the city of Kingston experienced a tragedy no one saw coming. On January 14, 1907, at about 3:30 p.m. local time, what is recorded as one of the world's deadliest earthquakes by U.S. Geological Survey struck Kingston. The magnitude 6.2 earthquake devastated a large part of the downtown area. Virtually all buildings south of Parade were either damaged or destroyed. The subsequent fires that followed lasted for hours before any effort could be made to try and extinguish them. Casualties from 800 up to 1,000 were believed to be a result of the earthquake and a tsunami that ensued. As a result of the damage, building codes were reformed and restrictions introduced. Damage estimated at £30 million in material damages was reported. A grant of £150,000 and a loan of £800,000 were secured from the British government. That was shared among property owners with responsibility for their own redevelopment. Residents as far north as Halfway Tree in St. Andrew had to be reconstructed. However, the most comprehensive rebuilding that was undertaken was in the commercial area. St. Andrew. The parish of St. Andrew was originally called Liguanea, and the name still lingers around the plain, as the capital city of Kingston is located there. Sadly, Liguanea is one of the few surviving words from the very first settlers of the island, the Arawaks. Presumably it stems from the word iguana, meaning lizard. The parish of St. Andrew was one of the original parishes that were created between 1661 and 1664. It is also one of the first parishes to be established by law in 1867. The name St. Andrew was derived from the patron saints of Great Britain. St. Andrew stretches from Crossroads to Rock Fort in the east, reaching up into Blue Mountains, sharing its borders with St. Thomas, Portland, St. Mary, and St. Catherine. In 1923, Kingston and St. Andrew were amalgamated to create the corporate area of Kingston and St. Andrew, as it is commonly referred to by most Jamaicans today. Capital. Halfway Tree is the capital of St. Andrew, and is originally known as Halfway Tree Pen. It is said that it had been owned by the Hodgkin family for over 130 years. Robert Hodgkin was Attorney General of Jamaica in 1707, and was a direct descendant of this family. Historians have said that Halfway Tree was named after a huge cotton tree that once grew at the junction of 4 roads, close to the parish church. People traveling from the western parishes into Kingston or further east often stopped at this point, halfway, to rest or to refresh themselves at a nearby tavern. The cotton tree is believed to have been in existence before the conquest of the island by the British in 1655. The clock tower, which is also at the center of Halfway Tree, was erected as a memorial to King Edward VII of England. Notable places or buildings in Kingston and St. Andrew. National Heroes Park. This park used to be known as the Kingston Racecourse because of its dominant activity and remained so up until 1953, when horse racing was transferred to Knutsford Park. It was later renamed the George VI Memorial Park in 1953 in honor of the late King and father of Queen Elizabeth II, and for her first visit to the island. Finally, in 1973, the National Heroes Park was the name given to the historical site. This park has been home to monuments that have been erected in honor of the island's national heroes. The National Library of Jamaica. The National Library of Jamaica serves as an important historical collector of Jamaican history. It collects information on Jamaica as well as information written outside of Jamaica about Jamaica or about notable Jamaicans. Its collection dates back to the 1500s and includes many rare books, maps, documents, pictures, and manuscripts. St. Andrew Parish Church. A historic building located in the heart of Halfway Tree, the St. Andrew Parish Church was founded in 1664 and is one of the oldest churches in Jamaica. The Jewish Cemetery. This cemetery is an important landmark in the history of Jamaica. It is the oldest denominational cemetery on the island. Halfway Tree Courthouse. This building was occupied by Imperial censors during the Second World War and was also the venue for the second Junior Center by the Institute of Jamaica. If you found this video interesting or informative, please give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching.